If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out. I'm not sure how much time I have left, or if anyone will ever find this recording, but if you do, please, I'm begging you never book the Beachfront Airbnb at the end of Kaulana Road. Not for the price, not for the view, not for the promise of paradise. There are things in this house that no one should see. I'm crouched in the back of the linen closet, knees pressed to my chest, the smell of mothballs and salt water thick in the air. My phone's at 5%, and every time I try to call for help, all I get is static and that same, wet, gurgling sound. I can hear footsteps in the hallway, bare feet, dragging, slow. Sometimes they stop right outside the door, and I have to bite down on my knuckles to keep from screaming. It's almost funny, in a sick way. Hawaii was supposed to be my escape. Sun, sand, the kind of turquoise water you see on postcards. I remember the first night, standing on the porch, thinking I'd finally outsmarted the system, found a hidden gem for half the price. Now, every time the wind rattles the shutters, I flinch. Every shadow looks like it's reaching for me. I broke the rules. I didn't mean to, not at first. But once you start, it's like the house knows. It watches. It waits. And when you slip up, it punishes you. If you're still listening, if you're still here, I need you to understand. This isn't a joke or some viral story. This is a warning. Don't come here. Don't even look up the listing. Some places are cheap for a reason. But it didn't start this way. Let me tell you how I got here. I should have known something was off when I saw the price. $200 for a whole week, oceanfront, in Hawaii? I mean, come on. I've seen enough clickbait horror stories to know that too good to be true usually means run the other way. But I was desperate, burned out, broke, and convinced that the universe owed me a break. So, when I found the listing, secluded beachfront cottage, private, authentic island experience, I clicked book now before I could talk myself out of it. The photos were straight out of a travel magazine. Golden sand, palm trees swaying, a little white house with blue shutters perched right on the edge of the water. There was even a hammock strung between two coconut trees, and a porch with a view that looked like it belonged on a screensaver. The reviews were glowing, if a little vague. Unforgettable stay. So peaceful, I never wanted to leave. Follow the house rules, and you'll be fine. That last one made me laugh. I figured it was just some quirky host thing, maybe no shoes inside, or don't feed the geckos. The drive from the airport was a blur of green mountains and roadside fruit stands. Locals waved as I passed, and for a moment, I let myself believe I'd stumbled onto something special. The air was thick with plumeria and salt, and the sun was so bright it hurt my eyes. I rolled down the window and let the wind tangle my hair, feeling lighter than I had in months. When I pulled up to the house, the host was waiting on the porch. Her name was Malia, and she looked exactly like her profile picture, warm smile, sun-bleached hair, a little too eager. She handed me a lei and insisted on a tour, pointing out the best spot to watch the sunset and where to find the extra towels. Everything felt normal, if a little rehearsed, until she handed me a thick, battered binder labeled House Rules. "Please read these before you settle in," she said, her smile faltering just a little. "It's very important." I almost didn't read the rules. I wish I hadn't. Instead, I tossed the binder on the kitchen counter and wandered out to the beach, toes sinking into the warm sand. The ocean was impossibly blue, and the only sound was the crash of waves and the distant call of a bird. For a while, I let myself forget about work, bills, and the gnawing sense that I was always one step behind everyone else. I even laughed at myself for being so paranoid. This was paradise, right? What could possibly go wrong? That night, I sat on the porch with a cheap beer, watching the sun melt into the horizon. The sky turned every shade of pink and gold, and I felt like I'd finally beaten the system. No crowds, no noise, just me and the endless Pacific. But when I went back inside, the binder was waiting for me on the table, open to the first page. The rules were unusual. The binder was heavier than it looked, the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a lawyer's office, not a beach cottage. The cover was warped from humidity, and the corners were dog-eared, like it had been handled 1,000 times. I flipped it open, expecting the usual Wi-Fi password, emergency numbers, maybe a list of local restaurants. Instead, The first page was handwritten in neat, looping script. House rules. Read carefully. 1. Do not open the third drawer in the master bedroom. 2. Never go outside after midnight, for any reason. 3. Always leave an offering of fruit or flowers on the porch before sunset. 4. If you hear knocking from the ocean, do not answer. 5. Do not use the back door after dark. 6. If you find sand inside the house in the morning, sweep it out immediately. Do not touch it with your bare hands. 7. The mirrors are for daytime use only. Cover them at night. 8. If you see someone standing at the edge of the water, do not speak to them. Do not acknowledge them. 9. If you wake up to the sound of chanting, stay in bed and close your eyes until it stops. 10. If you must leave, do so before the 7th night. I snorted, half expecting a hidden camera to pop out. Rule number 4. If you hear knocking from the ocean, do not answer. Seriously? I'd heard of quirky hosts, but this was next level. I mean, you guys remember that story about the haunted cabin with the taxidermy raccoon? This felt like that, but worse. At least the raccoon didn't come with a 10-step ritual. I flipped through the rest of the binder. Some rules were crossed out, as if someone tried to erase them, but the ink had bled through the page. There were little notes in the margins, "Don't forget," and "This is for your safety," written in a different, shakier hand. A few pages were torn out completely. I found a list of acceptable offerings: bananas, guava, plumeria blossoms, but never, ever pork, and a map of the property with certain areas circled in red. The back door was marked with a big X. I couldn't help but laugh. Was this some kind of local tradition? A prank for gullible tourists? I pictured Malia and her friends watching a live feed, waiting to see if I'd actually put a banana on the porch. I even considered making a TikTok about it, day 1 in my haunted Hawaiian Airbnb. Wish me luck. But when I looked up, Malia was standing in the doorway, watching me read. Her smile was gone. "You read the rules?" she asked, voice low. "Yeah, I did. Is this, like, a cultural thing?" I tried to keep it light, but she didn't laugh. "It's important," she said, eyes flicking to the binder. "Please, just follow them. All of them." I wanted to ask more, but she was already backing out the door, muttering something in Hawaiian under her breath. The air in the room felt heavier, like the humidity had doubled in a second. I shrugged it off, telling myself she was just being dramatic. Maybe she'd had one too many bad guests, or maybe this was her way of keeping people from trashing the place. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. The crossed-out rules, the torn pages, the way Malia's hands shook when she handed me the binder. I told myself I'd play along, leave some fruit on the porch, keep the mirrors covered, whatever. It was her house, her rules. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the waves crash against the shore, I kept thinking about rule number 4, knocking from the ocean. What did that even mean? I laughed it off, but I still double. Checked the locks before I went to sleep. The first night, I broke a rule without realizing it. That first night, the house felt alive in a way I couldn't quite explain. At first, it was just the usual sounds you'd expect from an old beach cottage, wood creaking, wind rattling the shutters, the distant crash of waves. I lay in bed, the window cracked open to let in the salty air, and tried to let the rhythm of the ocean lull me to sleep. For a while, it worked. I drifted in and out, half dreaming of sun and surf, the kind of sleep you only get when you're far from home. But then, just as I was about to slip under, I heard it. Footsteps on the sand, slow and deliberate, crunching closer to the house. I sat up, heart thumping, and peered through the blinds. Nothing. Just the moonlit beach, empty except for the shadows of the palm trees swaying in the breeze. I told myself it was probably a stray cat, or maybe a crab scuttling by. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was out there, just beyond the reach of the porch light. I tried to laugh it off. Classic jet lag, I muttered, rolling over and pulling the covers up to my chin. But the house didn't let me rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear something new, a soft tapping at the window, the faintest whisper of movement in the hallway, the creak of a floorboard that shouldn't have moved. Once, I thought I saw a shadow flicker across the wall, darker than the rest, gone before I could focus on it. The contrast was almost surreal. Outside, The world was pure postcard gentle waves, a sky full of stars, the scent of plumeria drifting in on the breeze. Inside, the air felt thick and heavy, like the house was holding its breath. I kept telling myself it was just nerves, that I was letting the weird rules and Malia's serious face get to me. But every time I started to relax, something would jolt me awake again. At one point, I got up to use the bathroom and nearly tripped over a patch of sand in the hallway. I frowned, remembering rule number 6: sweep it out, don't touch it with your bare hands. I grabbed the broom from the closet and swept the sand out the front door, feeling ridiculous. Who leaves sand inside a beach house, anyway? I didn't even remember tracking any in. Back in bed, I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone, but the Wi-Fi was spotty and every app seemed to lag. I gave up and turned off the lamp, letting the darkness settle around me. That's when I felt a prickling at the back of my neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. I told myself it was just the unfamiliar house, the leftover adrenaline from traveling, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I finally drifted off sometime after 3 a.m., only to wake up with a start, heart pounding. The room was silent, too silent, like the ocean had stopped breathing. I reached under my pillow for my phone and felt something crinkle. I pulled out a scrap of paper, folded in half. In shaky handwriting, it read, "You forgot the offering." My skin went cold. I stared at the note, trying to convince myself it was a prank, that I'd just missed it earlier. But I knew I hadn't. I would have noticed. The next morning, things got weirder. The sun was already blazing when I woke up, the kind of light that makes everything look sharper, cleaner, less haunted. I tried to laugh off the weirdness of the night before chalk it up to travel fatigue and an overactive imagination. I even snapped a selfie on the porch, captioned it, "Living my best life in paradise," and sent it to a group chat back home. If only they could see me now, I thought, clutching my coffee like a lifeline and pretending I hadn't just found a creepy note under my pillow. I decided to explore the area, hoping some fresh air and sunshine would clear my head. The little town nearby was picture perfect. Kids playing in the surf, old men selling coconuts from the back of pickup trucks, the smell of grilled fish and sweet bread wafting from a roadside stand. For a while, I let myself believe I was just another tourist, blending in with the crowd, soaking up the easy rhythm of island life. But the illusion cracked the moment I mentioned where I was staying. I stopped at a cafe for breakfast and, trying to make small talk, told the barista I'd found a great deal on a beachfront rental. She froze, her smile faltering. "Which house?" she asked, voice suddenly flat. I gave her the address, and she wouldn't look me in the eye after that. She just handed me my coffee and muttered, "Be careful," before turning away. I tried again with a couple of locals at the market, but the reaction was always the same: a quick glance, a mumbled excuse, and then nothing. It was like I'd said a dirty word, or admitted to some unspeakable crime. I tried to brush it off with a little dark humor. Maybe the house is famous for its killer Wi-Fi, I joked to myself. Or maybe I'm about to be the star of a new true crime podcast. But the more people avoided my questions, the more the sense of isolation crept in. The island was bright and alive, but the house felt like a bubble, cut off from everything else. When I got back, Malia was waiting on the porch, her expression unreadable. I tried to ask her about the house, how long she'd owned it, if she'd ever had any weird experiences, if the rules were some kind of local tradition. She just smiled that same tight smile and said, "It's an old house. Sometimes old places have old ways. Just follow the rules, and you'll be fine." I wanted to press her, but she changed the subject, offering me a plate of fresh mango and asking if I'd seen the sea turtles yet. The conversation felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something, or maybe just afraid to say it out loud. Later, while poking around the living room, I found a guest book tucked behind a stack of magazines. The cover was faded, the pages warped from years of humidity. Most entries were short, cheerful, "Great stay. Loved the view," but a few ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as if the writer had been interrupted. One page was just a single line, "Don't forget the rules." I ran my fingers over the ink, wondering what had happened to the people who'd written those words. Had they left early? Had they seen something they shouldn't have? That night, I decided to test the rules. I wish I could say I was motivated by curiosity or even bravery, but the truth is, I was just bored and a little bit cocky. The sun was still high, the house was flooded with light, and the weirdness of the night before felt like a bad dream. I kept thinking about the guest book, the abrupt endings, the rules that seemed more like dares than warnings. So, I decided to break one just to prove to myself that there was nothing to be afraid of. Rule number 1. Do not open the third drawer in the master bedroom. It was almost laughable. I mean, what could possibly be in there? Old linens? A broken hairdryer? I stood in the doorway, sunlight streaming in, and told myself I was being ridiculous. But my heart was pounding as I crossed the room. The first 2 drawers slid open easily. Socks, a faded t-shirt, nothing out of the ordinary. The third drawer stuck for a moment, as if something on the other side was holding it shut. I had to tug a little harder, and when it finally gave, a rush of cold air spilled out, prickling my skin. Inside the drawer was a photo of someone who looked just like me. I froze, staring at the picture. It was old, the colors faded, but the resemblance was uncanny. Same dark hair, same awkward smile, even the same birthmark on the left cheek. The only difference was the eyes. In the photo, they looked empty, like the person inside had already left. I reached in to pick it up, but as soon as my fingers brushed the edge, a shadow flickered across the wall behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I shoved the photo back in the drawer and slammed it shut, my bravado evaporating in an instant. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in my throat. I left the bedroom, heart racing, and went outside to sit on the porch, hoping the sun would chase away the chill. But the feeling lingered, a knot of dread tightening in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo, my face, but not my face, staring back at me with hollow eyes. I kept telling myself it was a coincidence, a trick of the light, maybe a relative of the host. But deep down, I knew better. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. The screen flashed with Malia's name. I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. Hello. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. You opened the drawer, didn't you? I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. How did you? Listen to me, she said, her voice trembling. You need to leave. Now. Pack your things and go. Don't wait for sunrise. Don't look back. I tried to protest, to ask her what was going on, but she cut me off. You don't understand. The rules aren't just for you. They're for everyone. For everything. You broke the first one. That's how it starts. I could hear something in the background, a low, rhythmic chanting, like a prayer or a warning. Malia's voice dropped to a whisper. If you see anything tonight, don't speak to it. Don't let it know you're afraid. The call ended abruptly, leaving me alone in the dark, the silence pressing in on all sides. I wanted to leave, I really did, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the house was holding me in place, waiting for something. I sat there, clutching my phone, listening to the wind rattle the shutters and the distant crash of waves. I told myself I'd leave but it was already too late. I know how this sounds. I do. If I were you, I'd be rolling my eyes, thinking, here we go, another creepypasta with a haunted house and a gullible idiot. But I swear, I'm not making this up. I wish I was. I wish I could chalk it all up to sleep deprivation or some bad poke from the food truck down the road. But what happened next, what kept happening, wasn't just in my head. After Malia's call, I sat in the dark, every muscle tensed, waiting for something, anything to happen. For a while, nothing did. The house was silent except for the wind and the distant, steady pulse of the ocean. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'd just had a nightmare, and the phone call was a weird, sleep-addled hallucination. But then the noises started. At first, it was just the floorboards creaking, the kind of sound you'd expect from an old house settling at night. But then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving from room to room. I held my breath, listening as they circled the living room, paused outside my door, then moved on. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe a stray cat that had gotten inside. But the footsteps were too heavy, too purposeful. I got up, heart pounding, and crept to the door. I pressed my ear against the wood, listening. Silence. I opened the door a crack and peered out. The hallway was empty, but the air felt colder, thicker, like I was breathing underwater. I closed the door and locked it, telling myself I was being paranoid. That's when the objects started moving. I'd set my keys on the nightstand, but when I reached for them, they were gone. I found them later in the bathroom sink, soaking wet. My shoes, which I'd left by the door, were lined up neatly in the kitchen, facing the wrong way. The guest book, which I'd left on the coffee table, was now open to a blank page, as if waiting for me to write something. I tried to leave. I really did. I grabbed my bag, threw in whatever I could, and headed for the front door. But when I opened it, I wasn't looking at the porch, I was staring into the kitchen. I blinked, slammed the door, and tried again. Same thing. No matter which door I opened, I ended up back in the same room. It was like the house was folding in on itself, trapping me in a loop I couldn't break. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you just break a window? Climb out. I tried. I picked up a chair and hurled it at the window, but the glass didn't even crack. It was like hitting a wall of solid stone. I tried the back door, the bathroom window, even the tiny attic hatch. Every time, I ended up back in the living room. The same faded rug under my feet, the same musty smell in the air. That's when I saw the face in the mirror. I was passing by the hallway mirror, not even thinking about rule number 7, when I caught a glimpse of something behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. I looked back at the mirror, and for a split second, I saw a face that wasn't mine. The eyes were too dark, the mouth twisted in a silent scream. I stumbled back, heart racing, and yanked the sheet off the bed to cover the mirror, hands shaking. If you're still watching, tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you've seen something like this before. Because right then, I felt like I was losing my mind. The house was playing tricks on me, warping reality, making me doubt everything I saw and heard. I tried to distract myself, to focus on anything normal. I turned on the TV, but every channel was static. I tried the radio, but all I got was that same, wet, gurgling sound I'd heard on the phone. I even tried to write in the guest book, but the pen wouldn't work, the ink pooling on the page and then vanishing as if the paper was swallowing it whole. Desperate, I grabbed my phone and tried to call for help. 911, my parents, even the airline, anyone who might answer. But every time, the call failed. The only number that would go through was Malia's. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over her name, wondering if she'd even pick up. I didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to know what she'd say. But I was out of options. The house was closing in, the walls pressing tighter, the air growing colder with every breath. I tried to call for help, but the phone only dialed one number. The phone rang twice before Malia answered. Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying or screaming or both. "You're still there," she whispered, as if she'd expected someone or something else to pick up. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out in a shaky rush. "I can't get out. The doors, the windows, they just lead me back inside. What's happening to me? What is this place?" There was a long pause. I could hear the ocean in the background, the same relentless, sucking sound I'd heard through the walls all night. "You broke the rules," she said finally, her words heavy with something like grief. "I told you not to. I told you they were important." I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but all I could manage was, "Why? What are the rules for?" She sighed, and I heard the sound of her lighting a match, the hiss and flare of it. "The rules weren't to protect the house from you. They were to protect you from the house." I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. "What does that mean?" Malia's voice was barely audible. "This place that's old. Older than the road, older than the town. My family's been caretakers for generations. We don't own it. We just keep it contained. The rules are the only thing that work. If you follow them, you can leave. If you don't," she broke off, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "You're not the first. Most people don't make it past the first night." I thought of the guest book, the entries that trailed off, the faces in the photos. What happened to them? The others? "They're still there," she said, and I heard the crack in her voice. "Somewhere. The house keeps them. It needs them. It needs you to break the rules." I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to keep from sobbing. "Why me? Why anyone? "It's not just this house," she said, her voice suddenly distant, as if she was reciting something she'd memorized long ago. "There are places all over the island's houses, hotels, even whole neighborhoods. Some are worse than others. Some are hungry. My family made a bargain a long time ago. We keep the rules, we keep the house fed, and it leaves the rest of the island alone." I felt a cold, crawling horror settle in my bones. "So you lure people here? You let this happen?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was flat, empty. "We don't lure anyone. The house chooses. The price is always paid, one way or another." I looked around, suddenly aware of the eyes on me. Not just the feeling of being watched, but the certainty of it. The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse and shift, as if something was moving just out of sight. I remembered the face in the mirror, the photo in the drawer, the sand that appeared and disappeared without warning. I realized, with a sick jolt, that I was being studied, measured, maybe even judged. "There's one rule I haven't broken yet," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "But I'm running out of time." Malia's breath caught. "Don't. Please. If you can hold out until sunrise, sometimes it lets you go. Sometimes." I almost laughed. "Sometimes." She didn't answer. The line went dead. I wandered the house, desperate for answers, for any way out. I tore through the binder, looking for clues, for loopholes. I found a page tucked in the back, written in a different hand, shaky, desperate. "If you see the ocean move, close your eyes. If you hear your name, don't answer. If you feel the house breathing, hold your breath." I pressed my ear to the wall and heard it, the slow, steady inhale and exhale, like the house itself was alive. I ran to the window and saw the ocean churning, waves rising higher than they should. The water black and slick as oil. Something was moving beneath the surface, something vast and ancient. I tried the doors again, but they wouldn't budge. I screamed for help, but my voice was swallowed by the walls. I saw movement outside, a figure standing at the edge of the water, just like the rules warned. I turned away, heart pounding, and caught a glimpse of myself in the covered mirror. For a split second, my reflection smiled back at me, lips curling into a grin that wasn't mine. I stumbled back, tripping over the rug, and landed hard on the floor. The house seemed to shudder around me, the walls pulsing with a slow, hungry rhythm. I crawled to the kitchen, searching for anything I could use as a weapon, but every drawer was empty except for the third one, the one I'd already opened. I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. I turned, but there was nothing there, just the shadows, growing longer, reaching for me. I realized then that the rules weren't just about survival. They were about containment, about keeping whatever lived in the house from getting out. I thought about the other properties Malia had mentioned, the network of cursed places scattered across the islands. How many people had vanished? How many stories had ended just like this? I looked at the binder, at the final rule. If you must leave, do so before the 7th night. I made a choice. I broke the final rule. If you hear knocking from the ocean, it's already too late. I used to laugh at stories like this. I'd scroll past posts about haunted hotels and cursed cabins, rolling my eyes at the people who claimed to see things in the dark. I thought I was smarter, too cynical to fall for ghost stories or island superstitions. But tonight, I'm not laughing. Tonight, I'm hiding in a house that's alive, and I know I'm not getting out. It started as soon as the sun went down. The air changed thicker, colder, heavy with the scent of salt and something rotten. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the house into a darkness so complete it felt like being buried. I tried my phone, but the screen was just static, the battery draining faster than it should. Every shadow seemed to move, stretching across the walls, reaching for me. I remembered the rules, every single one, but it didn't matter anymore. I'd broken too many. The house knew. It was awake. I tried to barricade myself in the bedroom, dragging the dresser in front of the door, but it didn't help. The walls pulsed, breathing in and out, the floorboards warping beneath my feet. I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging, like someone walking through wet sand. Sometimes they stopped right outside the door, and I could hear breathing, low and guttural, not quite human. I thought about the offering I'd forgotten, the sand I'd swept out, the mirror I'd left uncovered. Every mistake echoed back at me, each one a crack in the barrier that kept whatever lived here at bay. I tried to remember what Malia had said: hold out until sunrise. Don't let it know you're afraid, but fear was all I had left. I tried the windows again, but they showed only darkness, no matter how many times I blinked. I opened the front door and found myself in the kitchen, then the bathroom, then back in the bedroom. The house was folding in on itself, trapping me in a maze of my own panic. I screamed for help, but the sound was swallowed by the walls, muffled and distant, like shouting underwater. At some point, I heard the knocking. It started soft, almost polite, then grew louder, more insistent. It came from everywhere: the walls, the floor, the ceiling, but mostly from the direction of the ocean. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still feel it, vibrating through my bones. I remembered rule number 4. If you hear knocking from the ocean, do not answer. I didn't answer. I didn't even move. But the knocking kept coming, closer and closer, until it felt like it was right behind me. I saw things in the dark: faces in the mirrors, shadows slipping through the walls, hands reaching out from under the bed. I heard voices, too, whispering my name, chanting in a language I didn't understand. Sometimes I thought I saw myself, standing in the hallway, eyes empty, mouth twisted in a silent scream. I tried to record everything, to leave some kind of message for whoever found this. If you're still watching, if you've ever stayed somewhere with strange rules, tell me in the comments. Maybe we can figure this out together. Maybe there's a pattern, a way to survive. Or maybe I'm just the latest in a long line of fools who thought they could outsmart the darkness. I can hear it coming up the stairs. I don't think I'll make it. The air is so cold now, I can see my breath. The shadows are thicker, pressing in on all sides. I keep thinking about the guest book, the entries that ended mid-sentence, the faces in the photos that look just like mine. I wonder if anyone will remember me, or if I'll just become another story, another warning no one believes. If you ever find yourself in a place with rules that don't make sense, don't test them. Don't laugh them off. Some rules are written in blood, in fear, in the desperate hope that someone will listen. I didn't, and now I'm paying the price. This is my last message. Don't make the same mistake I did. If you hear knocking from the ocean, don't answer. If you see someone standing at the edge of the water, don't speak to them. If you feel the house breathing, hold your breath and pray for morning. I can hear it at the door now. The handle is turning. The shadows are moving. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. The listing is still up. The rules are still there. Will you follow them? If you search for secluded beachfront cottage, private, authentic island experience, you'll find it: same photos, same too good to be true price, same glowing reviews. The calendar is wide open, waiting for the next guest. Maybe you'll see my name in the guest book, or maybe it's already been erased, replaced by someone else's hopeful scrawl. Maybe you'll recognize the porch from my photos, the hammock swaying in the breeze, the blue shutters catching the morning light. It all looks so normal, so safe. But you know better now, don't you? Sometimes I wonder if anyone will ever find this message, or if it'll just get lost in the endless scroll of the internet, buried under vacation vlogs and travel hacks. Maybe you're watching this late at night, headphones on, lights off, thinking it's just another story. Maybe you're already planning your next trip, scrolling through listings, looking for a deal. Maybe you'll see the house, the rules, and think, it can't be real. That's what I thought too. The house looks empty now, but it isn't. The air is still thick with secrets. The walls still hum with that slow, steady breath. Sometimes, if you stand on the porch at sunset, you can hear footsteps in the sand, or see a shadow flicker across the window. The locals still won't talk about it. Malia is gone. Maybe she left the island. Maybe the house took her too. Or maybe she's just waiting for the next guest, binder in hand, smile a little too tight. I wish I could tell you what happened to me. I wish I could say I made it out, that I'm writing this from a safe place, far from the ocean and its hungry knocking. But the truth is, I don't remember leaving. I don't remember anything after that last night: the cold, the shadows, the door handle turning. Sometimes I think I'm still there, trapped in the looping hallways, running from something I can't see. Sometimes I dream of water, black and endless, and wake up gasping for air. But the story doesn't end with me. There are more houses like this. More rules. More stories. I've seen the post people talking about strange hotels, cabins with lists of warnings, apartments where the mirrors must always be covered. Maybe you've stayed in one. Maybe you felt that prickling on the back of your neck, the sense that you're being watched. Maybe you've broken a rule and gotten away with it. Or maybe you just think you did. If you've heard stories like this before, if you've got your own, share them below. Maybe together, we can piece it all together, find the pattern, the network, the reason why some places are cheap and some rules are never meant to be broken. Maybe we can figure out what's really out there, waiting for the next person who thinks they're too smart, too skeptical, too lucky to fall for a story like this. I want to believe there's a way out. I want to believe that if enough of us know the rules, we can survive. But every time I close my eyes, I see the ocean, hear the knocking, feel the house breathing. I wonder if I'm the only one left, or if there are others, trapped in their own stories, waiting for someone to listen. So here's my warning, my last piece of advice. If you ever see a beachfront Airbnb with a rule about the ocean, run. Don't book it. Don't even look at the listing. Some places are hungry. Some places remember. And if you've ever stayed somewhere with strange rules, or if you've heard stories that sound like mine, share them in the comments. Maybe together, we can survive the next one. Maybe together, we can finally break the cycle. But if you hear knocking from the ocean, don't answer. Not ever. Good luck.